Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Andrew, and today very excited to have a fellow LEO on the channel, which is always a fun time getting to kind of talk our prior war stories on the beat. But Cory Atkinson with the city of Oro Valley. And Cory, I'm going to pass it to you for a quick introduction.
So thanks, Andrew. So my background is primarily in law enforcement. I was a law enforcement officer for just shy of 11 years. Most of that was patrol work. Some of it involved IT, which got me kind of started on my cybersecurity journey. I have a bachelor's and a master's degree in cybersecurity. Presently, I'm the cybersecurity analyst for Oro Valley, meaning I've basically built their entire security program from the ground up. I do who knows what from a day-to-day incident response, vulnerability management, patching, firewalls, everything.
See, Cory, this is the first thing I'm going to hit on you for is titles don't always mean everything, right? So the title of cybersecurity analyst to me sounds like the cybersecurity analyst being a singular sole point of a lot of hats on a single job. So that's pretty awesome. And I can only imagine the stories you have and I know we've talked previously kind of before too, like that you have a relatively small team, I think, correct? Like under 10, maybe several or so.
So we have a team smaller than 20, but security, I'm the sole operator for that.
Oof. And that can be a lot. So burnout's real, but I'm sure you're staying quite entertained and doing some fun R&R things when we're not doing cybersecurity, which we'll get to toward the end. But as always, Cory, I'm going to ask you the first question I always swing to people as we get onto this channel, cybersecurity. So obviously you and I probably likely got to do what we tell our kindergarten teacher we want to be when we grow up. And we want to be cops. We want to be firefighters, doctors, veterinarians. But not everybody wants to get into cybersecurity. So do you know kind of, if you're willing to share, kind of what kind of got you into this passion of getting into cyber?
So, I have 5 kids, so big family. Eventually, after enough patrol work, which is chasing people, lights and sirens, all the things you associate with police work, I started to realize like this wasn't long-term sustainable for me for being a large family. So I started looking at elsewhere, like what else I could do, and I stumbled on TryHackMe. I busted a couple boxes, and I figured that I really like this thing. And for me, the cyber, well, that led to me getting a bachelor's degree and so on and so forth. But the idea of cybersecurity really resonates with me because law enforcement, you protect people. Like that is the one thing that everyone is going to, anybody in law enforcement is going to agree on. You're there to protect people, to help people however you can. Cybersecurity is the same way, just on the digital side. So that was really appealing to me, especially with the incident response aspects of it. That was my bread and butter. When things are on fire, when there's gunfire going on, I was involved.
It's funny, Cory, because people have asked me, like, when I was at the state, I had the same kind of correlation of selfless service with being like working for the public and working for your city and becoming law enforcement or joining the military. It's the selfless service that you kind of really enjoy. And it's funny because I've said the same analogy where it's like cyber and law enforcement are so similar. Because if you think of like a city police officer, so obviously City of Phoenix for myself, my victim was my citizens. And then my bad guys were my subjects. We'll switch that around now for cyber. And let's say, such as yourself for City of Oro Valley, your victim is always the city. And then your subject is the bad entity or action that's happening within your environment. So when it comes to like actions on objective or kind of like taking care of an incident or IR response, you're ideally responding to a call and then creating and writing a police report. Your 5 W's, who, what, when, why, where, and then your why on, okay, well, why is this happening? And then maybe some slight mitigations of, okay, well, we have these mitigations happening. So this is not, we don't have to be concerned about this, or, hey, we don't have these mitigations happening. So we need to take this into consideration and now act upon this to get rid of this and outside of our network. So that's pretty cool, Cory. And I got to ask, cause I love TryHackMe. How long were you in TryHackMe, do you think, before you made that pivot from law enforcement into kind of your new title?
It was a long time. I was on the top 1% before everybody was on the top 1%. So I was quite deep in there, and then I eventually found Hack the Box and pivoted over there for a while. So like I have no estimate whatsoever. I still dabble in there. So
Yeah, TryHackMe and Hack the Box for a lot of folks trying to leverage or make that pivot into cybersecurity. Those are two huge, amazing, fun resources. Because it's gamified. It's so much fun. They do such a good job, and they have so many different both platforms, TryHackMe and Hack the Box. They have walkthrough videos. They have kind of like hack-alongs. I know TryHackMe has now their AI bot kind of assistance where if you get stuck, you can actually now ask the little AI chatbot like, "Hey, what should I do next?" And then I recently just dived really deep into Hack the Box through my time at DEF CON. I was lucky enough to get a voucher for a year-long subscription. So not sponsored, but they were able to hook me up and say, "Hey, here's a voucher. Feel free just to dive in." And I've been specifically targeting their Sherlock boxes, which I don't know if you mess around with any of the Sherlock rooms. They're all blue team oriented, which is super fun to me because you're doing DFIR, SOC, threat intelligence, like malware analysis, PCAP stuff through Wireshark. And it's just a blast. I'm loving it. And it's just like you said, like I probably at the same sense, like my transition from law enforcement to cyber took a year. And I don't know if you recall how long it took you from your pivot, but same thing. I was in TryHackMe, slightly dabbling in Hack the Box. It was a little bit too more advanced for me at the time, and I thought it was more red team based at the time before I saw the Sherlock rooms. So I was really in TryHackMe, really hitting the intro to cybersecurity, the SOC level 1, SOC level 2, the threat engineering stuff, learning how to build out kind of a Splunk or Yara rules for detections, MITRE ATT&CK framework. Did you have any kind of other avenues or kind of trainings that you leveraged while kind of making your pivot from law enforcement into IT?
So it was kind of a journey. So it started in 2020, and that's when I started getting my bachelor's degree. And then it kept going. I think I landed my actual first cybersecurity job in February of 2024, no, 2023. And so it hasn't been that long for me. But for me, I did quite a bit of different trainings. I got all the CompTIAs basically. I didn't get the CASP or the Security X or whatever it's called now.
Mm-hmm.
I got the CYSA, I got the Security Plus, I got the Network Plus, which really got you to speak the language and learn the terminology.
Yes.
Which the worst thing about it is, for me, I was entirely self-trained, never had a mentor, nothing like that. And so you're learning this in like a void, and you don't know if you're going down the right avenues. And it wasn't as developed as it is now. Like you have Hack the Box Academy, which is something I've been doing a lot in lately. That's a great one, really plotted out for you and pathed out for you. So
yes.
I was one of those people where I'm like, am I doing the right thing? I've been doing this for X amount of years and I've got no results, I have no job interviews or anything like that for a while. And it was just me going from police work and trying to make those skills associated with my new role as a security analyst. And I kind of slipped into a very specialized role at the police department where it got me working on a lot of IT related things for about a year and a half of my police time was that. So that was like building images, building out packages, basically everything. I came in and I was like, why are we doing everything this way? And then I started learning PowerShell scripting, and then I started scripting. I was the guy that were like, he's going to take 6 days, and then we're never going to do this again.
No, and you made a good point on that, Cory. It's like, when and how do you know if you're going down the right path for training, especially if you don't have a mentor or someone to kind of like shoot back ideas and stuff on? Like, I was very lucky and blessed that when I made my pivot, I leveraged my military career to jump into a cyber protection team, and I found folks I could mentor and reach out to for asking questions and like, hey, is this a good certification to get? Or, hey, is this training make sense? Or is this a good way to do this? But I don't know if you have one now or if you offer a mentor, if you do mentor anyone at all. I'm sure folks still kind of maybe ask you or ping you every now and then, but how would you recommend someone in this day and age or now, like to find a mentor or like to get maybe like into more social groups or maybe network more?
So for me, still don't have a mentor. I mean, for me, I'm more of a white knuckle learning and just keep grinding until you get successful. But conferences have been a really a nice thing for me to network. For even with social skills with police work, you learn a lot of social skills. I learned to walk up to somebody, no matter their background, no matter how many tattoos they have, facial tattoos, gold chains, whatever you want, no matter how many people there are. Networking is super awkward. Like yes. That is one thing that is totally different than anything else I've done. I can talk to anybody else. I'm great with job interviews, but networking is super awkward.
It's weird because it's just like, even like when I kind of reached out to you, it's like I think we kind of vibe pretty well because like both prior law enforcement, we had a lot, I'd say, in common that we could also kind of pivot back to talk on rather than like the nerd cyber stuff.
Yeah.
But it's just like you walk into a conference and there's so many different extroverted folks, introverted folks pretending to be extroverts that are really introverts. Some folks are, some that just don't want to be there, but they have to because their work told them to be there. And it's just like, then you have folks that have just been burnt out. You have folks that are just like checked out and they've just been in cyber for too long and they're wearing too many hats and their work is like slamming them with so much to do. But no, I think you're right though. Like I think by attending conferences and obviously I'm a chatty Cathy, so it comes very easy on myself to go up and talk to somebody randomly. But having that confidence, it can be difficult. I know when I talk to a few other folks through here in the channel, a few of them made like really cool goals. Like, hey, you know what? This month I'm going to go to 2 local meetups and I'm going to shake 3 people's hands and I'm going to introduce myself 3 different times. And then on the second meetup, that's when they're okay, this time I'm going to do that same thing, but now I'm actually going to like ask to get their LinkedIn or ask like maybe like a main person presenting, like to link up and have a 15 or 10 minute call chat after the fact at a later date to have a further deeper conversation on like, hey, training, certifications, so forth. So, which I think is important. And that kind of, go ahead.
Oh, no. I was just going to say that's definitely a much better approach than just white knuckle grinding through your certs until you think you're good enough for it.
Now, I will say though, Cory, you're not wrong on some of the process of that though, right? Because it's just like when in doubt and like, let's say you can't find anybody like you said, and I know you said you currently don't have a mentor. So, hey guys, he's up for grabs or gals, take this guy, make him a CISO. But by doing that self-teaching too, it kind of gets you into a really solid habit of like taking good notes, really understanding good base frontline fundamentals. And that way, and we're going to talk about this because you actually made a good point of it before we were talking, being able to find problems and then make solutions with those. And so, Cory, I know you and I were talking before this, when it comes to interviews, because I know you've sat on a few interviews, but then also you've used this in your own interviews. What are some things that you recommend folks do to either kind of make themselves stand out the best as the best candidate or to kind of really enhance themselves on their resume and such like that?
Well, the first thing is just always know what type of, like if you can know the type of environment you're coming into. A previous officer had reached out to me about basically a help desk level position. He's like, what can I do to prepare for this? So I sent him basically how to set up an AD environment, how to manage users and that, just get them that lowdown. And so that put them miles ahead of everybody else. Know what they're running and try to get your hands on that tooling in order to expose yourself to it. For me, one thing that stood out when I got this position, I actually was picked over somebody with actual cybersecurity experience. And in the first round interviews, they were discussing an issue they had. As soon as they mentioned that issue, it clicked in my head. And I went home and I set up an environment and I basically solved this issue using open source tooling. And then in the second round interview, I was like, this is how I would solve your problem. And so by the second interview, I wasn't just coming and begging for a job. I was like, you have a problem, this is your solution. And so that was the selling point, I guess, for me, for them on me.
And I want people to kind of let that just sink in, because not only did he, well, I guess first question, did you actually take that said solution and actually implement it when you got hired on? Or did they say, hey, let's hire on, I mean, not going into too much of the meat and potatoes, or did they say, hey, here's some actual toolings that can be purchased that we can do the same thing with that aren't open source?
So I went with a different tool, but yes, I did solve that. When I was first hired on, it was
that's awesome.
I was given access to their computer network, and they always said that I looked like a crazy guy with a whiteboard. I was just scribbling all the things I was going to do and change and modify and so on and so forth.
I am such a checkbox kind of guy, and I don't know if that's like some cops, but sometimes I'm the same way. Like I'll have like a whiteboard or like a piece of paper, and like I'll write out all my tasks. And as I went by, I'm like check, scribble, scratch out, and I just mark things down as I started to knock them out.
Yeah.
But no, that's fantastic, and it's like that ability to take a problem and go and replicate that takes work, and that's one thing I emphasize to people, that like breaking into cyber isn't as easy as social media makes it maybe sound to be. Like you mentioned and I mentioned, like my transition into getting into cyber took about a year. I think yours roughly took about the same, maybe less, because you were able to pivot from and in law enforcement to that tech position while still in law enforcement. But then leaving that, I say roughly still took you about a year and some change. But it's yeah. So I tell people that, hey, like, keep this in mind, that you're going to graduate college, or you're going to get all these cool certs, you're going to go through a boot camp. And if you have that mindset, which is always a strong mindset to have, like, hey, I'm going to be confident, keep yourself on a high hope. Like, I'm going to get out here and I'm going to get a 6-figure job and I'm going to be a rock star. I want that to happen. But in true full retrospect, with today's market, with all the ghost jobs and just people, recruiters that will just ghost you after reaching out, maybe having one round of an interview, or even applying for an interview and then never even getting an email back, whether you've got accepted or you got rejected, is huge right now in the industry. And I think I just need to reiterate to folks that, like, continue working yourselves, keep training, keep messing around in home labs, do cool projects, and replicate that and put that on your resume and brag about it on LinkedIn. I call LinkedIn the new cover letter of when it comes into, like, looking and doing jobs. Because the first thing a recruiter or a manager or anyone's going to do, or it's even a cop trick, first thing I'm going to do when I get a name or I hear somebody's name that's trying to do something, I'm going to look them up online. I'm going to go on LinkedIn. I'm going to see what they're doing. I'm going to see if they're currently in school, what they're working on, if they have any GitHub repositories, any cool projects they've worked on, just to kind of see what they are and what they're about.
And a couple points on that, just to highlight a couple things that I took away from that, or well, to emphasize your 6-figure thing. So I actually took a pay cut to get into cyber. I took a pretty large pay cut to get into cyber.
Yeah, I did too. Yep.
So that was another thing I was talking during my interview. I'm like, listen, guys, you're not going to offer me a pay raise. I'm taking this because I'm hungry. I want this job. This is what I want to do. I'm going to do this whether or not you give me this job, but this is what I want to do. And then the other aspect is when you have a problem and you bring a solution, you're showing critical thinking skills right off the bat. The most important thing about our job and the most important thing about law enforcement was critical thinking skills. If you don't have those, you're not going to succeed. And so that really emphasizes that.
It's funny you mentioned that. So it's like one of the strongest parts, I think, of what makes me a great analyst that I've been told is sometimes when we have certain things that come across our plate, it's our job to do, as like a SOC analyst, to do like the root cause analysis and like, hey, like, what's going on? Mm-hmm. And sometimes a lot of junior analysts I work with now, they have that lack of like making that decision. They get stuck in, and you'll understand the term, they get stuck in the OODA loop. Like, oh, What's next? What's next? What's next? Like, hold, dude, like, let's take a step back. Let's pivot. We've looked at logs. We've done this. We've done the open source. Is this something that we can see or solve, or do we need to escalate this up? Do we need to ask a tier 2? And I have a really strong foundational, maybe I can pivot, or I'm just good making those hard decisions. Like, nope, this is what I want to do. Here's why. This is why I'm going with this choice. And sometimes making a decision is better than not making a decision. And sometimes sitting on something too long has caused more headaches than problem solved or holes filled. So yeah, the root cause analysis and like having like a good, strong sense of like, nope, this is what we're doing. And then being confident to be able to back that. Like, here's why. Here's all my findings. That goes a long way. So when it comes to, I'll say there's 3 things that people always look for in a resume when it comes to hiring, right? So you have your certifications, your educations, and your experience. When it comes to the 3, where do you line up each one? So I'll tell you mine is obviously experience goes first. Mm-hmm. I would say my personal opinion, I think education goes second, because there's some things out of academia you're going to get that I think are more important than certifications. Because there's some certifications that you're just not going to get yourself until you're on with the company, such as SAN certifications. And then the third is the certifications. And my why behind that is because obviously hands-on experience is better. Like, that's cash is king in a sense of it, because you're actually doing the job, you're doing the skills, you understand the concepts, you're in the weeds of the thick of it. Education, I think, is a second important aspect of it, is because you're learning the terminology, you're learning the theory kind of behind things, and maybe more of like the academia version of like the book answer of why this is happening. Mm-hmm. Certifications, I think, are at the lowest tier. And the reason why is because you could have a alphabet of certifications behind your name. But if you're not retaining the information and you're just test dumping and you're just getting those certifications to have a certification to fluff the resume or to meet a requirement, It's like riding a bike. You have to use the skill in order to retain it, or you're going to lose it. What are your kind of thoughts on that?
No, I would definitely line those up the same way. And I would just say you shouldn't, like, besides experience, you can never have enough experience. If you've got 90 years of experience, you're good to go for a junior analyst nowadays. But like with education, like don't get your second master's degree. Don't get a doctoral degree if you don't have a junior analyst role.
Yeah.
You can't beat that to death. Certifications are always it's an easy way. It's an easy place to start if you can't afford the others. You can get your Network Plus, you can get your Security Plus. They're not going to get you a job necessarily at the end of the day. Maybe you'll get into help desk, but they're going to get you that foundation of terminology at the very least that you need. Like if you don't understand what people are talking about, you're not going to get the job.
Yeah. And I think like you mentioned too, like I took a pay cut too in my first role. And that's one thing I let people know, like, hey, don't be afraid to start at level 1 and then just grow inside the company. Cause just like you said, like getting into the role. Cause like, hey, like I need to get into this role. It's in a cybersecurity title. I know I'm going to get the experience I need and want from this, and then get yourself settled, be the best candidate, be the best employee. And then just like, let that just grow. Because then from there, you really have opportunities from there. You can stay internal. You can promote from inside. After a few years, if you decide to pivot, you can. But that experience is going to be golden. And understanding that, does money fix problems? Sure, it does. But at the end of the day, like experience is gold. And I've talked to many folks that I've mentored that were able to get into their first role, whether it's like a senior help desk role, system admin, or a SOC analyst role, or even a pen tester role for one of my friends that just got picked up down in Hawaii. It's getting in. I can get you in the door, or at least maybe get you an interview through a referral, and many other places can. But it's your job to be the best candidate. So just like you said, finding problems or solutions they're having and being able to communicate that on that interview when you're doing your questions, depending on how they're phrased or worded, and then making sure that instead of mass applying out 100 applications all the same way, taking your time to refine those, matching them to the actual job titles and requirements that each place is looking for, will make you stand out a little bit more rather than having some generic resume you might be applying out to. Out of chance, Cory, do you remember, would you say, what was it like doing your first interview out of law enforcement, getting into the cyber role?
I'm still the same way today, but I'm always very military like yes sir, no sir, thank you sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am, and so that's I always come off I guess a little bit overly professional in that aspect. But for me, it was this one specifically was a Zoom call, so that was new for me too. Law enforcement, it's face to face. If I want to go talk to somebody, I'll hunt them down. So yeah, that was a newer thing for me, and we were chatting, and I actually brought up because I take lots of notes. That's one thing they don't tell you about cybersecurity or law enforcement. You're always writing. You're always writing. So I had a bunch of notes for my TryHackMe actually, and we were talking, and the formal interview was over, and we were discussing it. And they were like, do you have any penetration testing experience? I was like, no, I have no cybersecurity experience. I was like, I do this on the side. And I was like, I can show you my notes. And so I started walking through some of my walkthroughs that I'd written to myself live on the interview call and everything like that. And so that actually, I think, helped impress them a little bit, because by that time I was like top 1%, which doesn't mean I'm anything, but it does get you through those repetitions where you're starting to learn what you're doing, the actual attack chain, and how to bring it into a box.
No, that's awesome, man. And I think it's like I told people, taking notes, and like Tyler Ramsby has some really good trainings and stuff. He does, he's with Hack Smarter and works with Simply Cyber. Yeah. The documentation of how you're doing if you're doing rooms, or if you're doing a walkthrough, do your own notes, document how you solve something, and then write out that procedure. Cause then the other thing too, that I tell a lot of analysts that first get onto their first few roles, when they work certain cases that don't have procedures, I'm like, hey, be the person that makes one. Write those out. And one, you're not only going to improve yourself, you're going to improve your team, because you can share that with your team, and possibly share that with your boss and see if they actually want to make that a new standard operating procedure or like an actual playbook. And congratulations, you just wrote your first playbook or like an SOP on how something can get solved. Yep. And there's so much that I think they can grow with that when it comes into, one, being standardized and systematic for kind of good note taking. And then two, just it turns in, it's the term gatekeeping gets used sometimes with cyber, which is something that I emphasize horribly to stay away from, and just be able to share information and knowledge. Because when you share with everybody, one, you help make the team stronger and grow. And two, being a gatekeeper, you can kind of come off as a dick is the best way to say it. Because you're just an asshole. Like, well, there's this process, but I can't let you see it. I'm like, why? Well, it's because, and in my head, I'm like, it's because you need to feel special. And if you share it with me, then you feel like you're losing your worth in this team, which is horrible. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you've seen or have there been any horror stories, I guess, when it comes into like worst cyber day?
No, I work with a pretty good team. Definitely, but like butted heads in the beginning. Like I'm cybersecurity, they're doing IT, and like they didn't get why I insisted on changes. I solved that by having them go to a training, specifically one of the SANS training that I got our director to cover, and that kind of got me on board with them. But no, not so much. For me, I'd say it's kind of the opposite, where the best advice I could give somebody new in this field is don't be afraid to ask questions. Doesn't matter if they're stupid or not. Like it's just, I used to train a lot of training officers, and there's no dumb questions. Like if you don't ask me this question when everything hits the fan, you're going to panic and you're not going to know what to do. So if you're in a room, you don't understand what's going on, ask a question. Like I do it all day long. If I don't understand something, I will 100% be the dumb guy in the room asking what that means. There's no way for me to improve otherwise.
I have a good question for you, Cory, because I've had this happen. So I've been on calls where it's like people start saying stuff and like things I'm not like aware of. I'm like, or they'll say a term or something where I'm like, what does that mean? And like, there's been a few times I'm like, hey, real quick, can you elaborate on term blah? Yeah. And they're like, oh yeah, of course. And then like at the end of like that said call, like I'll either have someone come to me like, hey, I'm so glad you asked that question because I didn't know that. Yeah. And it's almost like some people are afraid to ask questions because it makes them seem like they don't understand something, or that like they're not at the level of aptitude that everyone else is in a room. And I'm the same way, man. I'm like, there is no such thing as this. Well, within reason, there's no such thing as a stupid question. And I encourage it because it's like, look, like I could have an analyst that's never heard of a specific term, or maybe like a way that something gets broken down, or how C-suite level leadership look at something. And it's like, well, hey, if they've never seen it and talked about it, they're not going to know. And it's like, I want those folks to ask me those questions because one, it also, when you get asked those questions, it gives you a chance to yourself kind of like explain it, which I think the best way to also learn is teach. So it's like, it gets a good refresher for you to say, okay, well, how can I explain this to make sure that I'm making it sure it's a clear and concise way for them to understand what's happening. And then I kind of ask them like, hey, look, so did that make sense? Or kind of explain it back to me now in your own terms. And it's like, as long as they can do that, I'm like, sweet, I just relayed the information perfectly. But I've also had issues where it's like, I've done that. And then I've gotten messages like, hey, like they don't want that coming from a tier 1 analyst. Like that needs to be coming from an engineer. I'm like, why? I'm like, the question's still good. And even my engineers are like, yeah, that was a really good question. Like they just want it coming from the correct level of the pecking order, I guess. That's my own opinion. I don't know, but.
So, and for me too, I've had a lot of, there's a very sweet lady I work with, her name's Deborah, and she'll always ask me questions about stuff. And she's been in the business forever. Like she's an IT professional, but she'll always ask me why I'm doing these things. And then she'll apologize right after. I'm like, never apologize. If I can't explain why I'm making this change in our environment, I shouldn't be doing it. Like end of the day, I should not be doing that.
No, that's awesome. And like just like you said, that I want people to ask me questions because one, I really enjoy talking about cybersecurity. That's why I pull people on like you onto these YouTube chats, and we get to talk about cyber stuff and just kind of get to share our journeys. And one thing that you'll maybe resonate with as well, because if you had to train officers as a field training officer, it's like at some point in time, Andrew's going to retire, Cory's going to want to retire. And we need to make sure that we're training our predecessors into this next role, and they need to make sure they understand what they're doing. And I want the cyber defenders and pen testers of the future to have a strong baseline, strong fundamental of what right looks like, what the MITRE ATT&CK framework is, what a standard procedure and SOP is, why we review logs, why we look at PCAPs, what's network traffic, why do we care about these APTs doing these type of vulnerabilities, and how can we protect ourselves against it? Because if we're not asking those questions and we're not training folks to consider those kind of next steps of why and asking those kind of questions, we're not doing them a favor. So no, 100%. That's a super solid point.
and it costs you nothing. And when that person is a CISO and you're still an analyst, that might be the guy who gives you that hand up because you helped him one day.
Man, dude, I've seen folks skyrocket through leadership sometimes, and it's just that they pick things up quick, and it's good for them. Some people want to sit on that hat. They want the hat. They want the role. And sometimes people just Excelsior, man, and they can just rocket and score, and I love it. I love seeing people on my team grow. And there's aspirations, obviously, for I think every person to kind of make to that next tier role, depending on what your goals are. But yeah, it's same thing like with my friend circle. Like I love seeing my friends be successful, and I love seeing folks I work with within this industry or that I mentor send me that message saying, "Hey, I had this interview today, and I'm moving to the next round. Hey, I'm moving to the third round. Hey, I'm so excited I got the job." Because it's just good to see, and like I think it gives good vibes and kind of leads into a good voodoo juju for sharing that information. It's the aspect, like I said before, not gatekeeping.
Yeah. And plus, when you see the people that you've trained be successful, it always feels good. I had one of my old trainees from the city of Tucson Police Department, reach out to me 2 weeks ago. He's like, "Hey, I'm becoming a sergeant. Can you make the promotion ceremony?"
Dude, let's go. That's awesome, dude. Ah, that's so cool. Well, Cory, I have two more questions for you, and I'll wrap it up and give you some time back in your day. So when you're not doing cybersecurity and you need to kind of unplug, unwind, what are some things you like to do for fun when you're not wearing the hat and you get to relax?
Was white knuckles cybersecurity getting certifications an option? For me, I have a family, and they take up basically all of my free time. If I'm not doing that, then I'm mostly doing cyber stuff. But occasionally, I'll give myself a break in between study sessions, and I'll play some video games or watch some anime, something along those lines.
I say, what is a break? What is rest? It's
like today, I took the day off, but I took the day to catch up on a SAN certification I'm working on right now. And so the whole day I was working that. I took about a 30-minute break between. But yeah, you've got to really love what you're doing in order to keep grinding through it.
No, that's awesome, man. And so I will ask one thing, because I know you do hold a few SAN certifications. If a individual were to get their work to pay for a SAN certification, do you have one that you'd recommend for, we'll say like a security analyst, which is like kind of like the title maybe you sit at? Like, what would you recommend?
So there's a lot that are good. Like going to a SANS training, that was the most fleshed out training I've ever gone to. I had a lot of great instructors. I had a Security 530. The author for that was actually my instructor.
Oh, cool.
Guy knew what he was doing. That was a fantastic course. So like Security 5 or Sec 530, that was like if you really wanted to know like how to organize an entire security infrastructure end to end, that is the one that is going to drown you in that lake of architecture. But if you're just like, for me, I'm trying to focus on security engineering and incident response. And so right now I'm doing 4508, and that is just everything end-to-end incident response. It's event logs, it's forensic analysis, it's memory analysis. It is everything. And it is a massive amount of information. If you want to dive into Windows incident response and drown, like completely
and drown.
That is the course for you. That will take anybody and harden them into an incident responder with that knowledge at the very least. Experience is always great.
Should have put a warning tag on this. Like, by the way, getting into cybersecurity can be like drowning, because even my first probably month or two, it was such a fire hose. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know. I guess pivoting back to one maybe extra side question. So you get the job, you have your start date, you put your 2 weeks in with PD. How was your first week? What were your thoughts? How crazy was it? Was it 2 fire hoses? Was it 5? Because my first week I felt like I jumped in the ocean and I had nothing, and I'm like, oh man, I fucked up.
For me, it was before I had worked with a lot of different I had a lot of experience. Like I had really dove deep into PowerShell. Instead of doing anything by a GUI, I tried to do everything with PowerShell, which gave me a lot of experience with that. And so when I hit the ground, it was one of those we are changing everything everywhere across everything. Like I'm setting everything on fire and we're starting anew. And so for me,
let it burn.
I really hit the ground running, and I've been sprinting ever since. I've really made myself an integral part of the organization. I work directly with the director constantly. We're always planning what we're going to do or what changes we're going to make, how we're going to make things better. So it was honestly a lot of fun for me. It was playing with TryHackMe, but in real life.
That's awesome, dude. And that's also really good information, because it's like when you get onto that next first role, be the go-to person for your boss. If there's an ad hoc like project or something that needs to happen, volunteer. See if you can help out with that. I always try to make it myself known on my teams, like, hey, if anyone needs help, there's the term, hey, I have extra cycles. So it's like, hey, look, I have some extra time. Does anyone need help with anything? Any research? Does anyone need help in any doing more security alerts or doing some deep dive on a project? Yeah, no, so that's huge. And yeah, the SANS certifications, like you said, yeah, SANS is like obviously the training, I'd say, besides maybe OSCP and some other type of, depending on where you want to go, right? So your blue team, GCP,
So
compliance.
I've had the benefit of, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're good.
I've had the benefit of doing the OSCP training too. I never got the cert, but yeah, I would definitely say like the OSCP training is much harder to digest.
Yes.
Versus like a SANS instructor, you're like, this guy knows what he is doing. Like I'm hoping in 2 lifetimes I can be half as good as this guy. And so that would be the big difference. I just want to make that clear. Like, because I dove into the OSCP training and I finished the entire training, and it's quite a lot to digest, and it does not hold your hand at all, as they always say, try harder.
Mm-hmm.
But just wanted to clarify that a little bit.
No, definitely. But no, I think it's great information, like you said. And it's obviously a huge thank you for coming on the channel, Cory. I'm going to be sending you some awesome, cool Ginger Hacker swag as a thank you. I'll be sending you the link to pick your cool poison of what you'd like as a memorabilia for me, allowing to steal some time away from your night. But finally, last but not least, last bit of advice you'd give someone trying to break into cyber.
If you really enjoy this, the grind will pay off. Keep working. You're not alone. Everyone's out here is struggling to get that next position. If you're an analyst, you're trying to be an engineer. If you're an engineer, you're trying to be whatever specialization you want to go into. Everyone is out there struggling just like you. Just push through it. If you love this, you will find a way to make it work. Don't give up.
Awesome, Cory. And that's honestly amazing. Great information, that great push for folks to know. And just to re-echo that, like, you're going to get deny letters. You're going to apply to 100 positions. You're going to get 101 rejections. Why a place will send you 2, it happens. But that final last place that gives you your shot to break into cyber is where you need to stay and make yourself shine. Well, hey, Cory, thank you so much for coming on the channel and sharing your story and all your information with us tonight. And everyone, thanks for staying and watching this another amazing episode. And as always, I'll catch you on the next episode of Breaking into Cyber.